I'm a developer, I'm an indie developer, or I'm a startup, the app that would take me 3 months to build a year ago now takes me 3 weeks to build. Last December, over the holiday break, I built an iOS app together with my two oldest daughters. Literally by copy-pasting code from ChatGPT into Xcode. The lady that built that app literally shipped it 2 months before the awards came out, and I think she already had like 1,000 subscribers in 2 months. 10, 15 years ago, when we did mobile games, we had to spin up our own servers. We would physically move racks of servers from one data center to the other, and AWS kind of took all of that noise away. The features and functionality you get for free are the exact same things that OpenAI uses to make billions and billions and billions of dollars. Whoever says something different doesn't actually understand mobile app economics. A couple of months back, Bolt did like a big global hackathon. I think they ended up with over 100,000 people participating. That's the thing you should be thinking about as an app developer. What am I building? What is it for? Who is it for? And everything that distracts from that, you should not do or outsource.
Welcome to the show. Today, we are talking with Rik Haandrikman, VP of Growth at RevenueCat, the company that's become the backbone of mobile app subscriptions. RevenueCat now powers over 70,000 apps and processes billions in subscription revenue annually. But what makes this conversation particularly timely is the RevenueCat's recent $50 million Series C funding and their bold expansion into what they call RevenueCat Part 2, moving from a simple subscription API to becoming the most important software company for apps. We are also diving into one of the hottest trends in app development, AI-powered vibe coding, where developers use tools like ChatGPT, Cursor, and Lovable to build apps with natural language. RevenueCat has positioned itself right at the center of this revolution with their new MCP server that integrates with every major AI assistant. Whether you're a developer or trying to monetize your first app, a growth marketer looking into optimized subscription funnels, or someone curious about how AI is changing app development, this conversation will give you insider insights from someone at the very heart of the mobile app economy. So if you're someone who wants to hear from business leaders who have actually built global companies and navigated major technological shifts, hit subscribe now. We bring you conversations with founders and CEOs who share the real stories behind their success, the failures, the pivots, and the strategies that actually work. So sit tight and enjoy this conversation. Rik, it is fantastic to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm always varying degrees of awesome. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's so great to finally connect with you. I have been following RevenueCat's journey for a while now, and honestly, what you guys have built is just incredible. And I was reading about your recent $50 million raise and this whole RevenueCat Part 2 vision becoming the most important software company for apps. It's such an ambitious goal, and coming from where you started with just helping developers handle subscriptions to now tackling everything from user acquisition to cash flow to AI powered app development, it's pretty wild to see that evolution. But before we dive into the all exciting technical stuff and where RevenueCats is headed, I would love that our listeners get to know the person behind all this growth. You seem to be at the center of some really fascinating trends in the app world right now. So tell us about your path to becoming VP of Growth at RevenueCat and what drew you to the intersection of growth marketing and developer tools, and how has your perspective on mobile app monetization evolved over the years?
That's a bunch of different questions at the same time. Uh, I'll start with how I got here. Because I've been at RevenueCat 3 years, like 3 days from now, it'll be 3 years. Before that, I ran growth for Bitrise. It's like a mobile DevOps tooling company. So very much working with mobile developers or mobile teams. And I did that for, I think, 4 or 5 years. Before that, I ran growth for free to play games for close to a decade. So, to answer your question on that intersection of growth and developer tooling, I did both, right? It's very much like a combination of my past experience. And yeah, I remember Jacob, the CEO, reaching out to me and that just like immediately making sense because I could see how my past experience would help just not just RevenueCat but also RevenueCat's users.
That is such an interesting background, and it really shows in how RevenueCat approaches growth. Speaking of evolution, let's talk about the elephant in the room: AI powered app development. Your team recently announced the RevenueCat MCP server that integrates with ChatGPT, Claude, and Perplexity. You mentioned seeing 130,000 apps submitted to app stores last month, many built with AI. From your vantage point at RevenueCat, how is this vibe coding trend fundamentally changing? Who can build the apps and how they think about monetization? And walk us through what it actually looks like when developers configure RevenueCat directly through AI assistants. Like, how do you ensure that these AI generated strategies actually make money?
Yeah, for us, we kind of started seeing something happen, I guess, a year ago, right? And actually, myself, I'm not a developer by trade. I've worked in developer tooling for a while. I actually I did computer sciences in college ages ago, but never really did mobile development. Last December, over the holiday break, I built an iOS app together with my two oldest daughters, literally by copy pasting code from ChatGPT into Xcode, and that worked. Right, was a little tricky. I think that the fact that I've been working with mobile for a long time that helped, but we got something working. In the months since, uh, all of that's become 100 times easier. Um, a couple of months back, Bolt did like a big global hackathon. I think they ended up with over 100,000 people participating. Um, Tools like that allow you to literally just give in a prompt, tell the AI what type of app you're looking to build, and it'll whip up a pretty decent MVP. Not a full product, but it'll whip up a pretty decent MVP. As all of that was happening, right? So the AIs became better and better at enabling people to build apps. We saw the amount of apps explode, right? Not just within RevenueCat, but also just like in the broader app store. You can see that there's like many more apps being launched today than there were a year ago. As of right now, it looks like most of those incremental apps, so those extra apps being launched, are the extra apps that developers are publishing, more so than non-developers publishing apps, right? So if I'm a developer, I'm an indie developer, or I'm a startup, the app that would take me 3 months to build a year ago now takes me 3 weeks to build. And what a lot of developers are doing is, with that extra bandwidth they have, they just build an extra app or two extra apps. So the primary thing that's happening as of right now is that people that already could build an app are just building way more apps. There are some examples out there of non-developers shipping apps, but it's actually still pretty challenging. Not because the AI doesn't know how to build an app, but because getting an app into the App Store involves way more than just coding the app. You always have to go through Google Play. You always have to go to App Store Connect. Those things are kind of complicated. You have to compile an app to actually run on a device, which is not the same as coding an app, right? So maybe there's some like CI/CD or a build system involved. Uh, when something there fails, the AI is not going to be able to help you. So the only people that manage to like properly vibe code an app without a development background and get it into the app store are tend to be incredibly motivated to begin with. They're like learning a lot of stuff along the way to make that possible. It's not easy by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, that sounds like you have been through tons of AI implementation. But zooming out, this AI wave is hitting right when RevenueCat is having a massive expansion moment. RevenueCat Part 2 isn't just about subscriptions anymore. You're talking about, user acquisition, virtual currencies, and even cash flow solutions. You're essentially becoming the Shopify of mobile apps. So, when you have so many problems you could solve in the app ecosystem, how do you decide what to tackle next? And from a growth perspective, when you are already processing revenue for 1 in 3 new subscription apps, where does growth come from that scale? I mean, how?
Yeah. Well, it's closer to 1 in 2 new subscription apps now. The way we do that is, I think, how every startup should think about like product expansion or feature expansion. We just like listen to and look at current customers, and what that looks like exactly is easiest to like illustrate with an example. The AI wave has been good for us in a couple of ways, right? So people can build and ship more apps, and we're lucky enough that they build and ship a lot of those apps with RevenueCat, so we just see more apps being shipped. But also, there's a whole new type of app being developed, right? The AI apps, the ChatGPTs, the Perplexities, all the AI wrappers out there. A couple of years ago, that type of app didn't exist, and by and large, those apps opt for using RevenueCat, right? We quite famously have ChatGPT as a customer, which is very very exciting. But there's a ton of other AI apps out there, and a lot of these apps are um, API wrappers. And by that I mean is like uh, the app uses under the hood ChatGPT or Claude or some other AI. Um, the usage of those AIs is metered, right? So, for example, I have a plant identifier app. Every single time somebody snaps a photo, I send the photo to OpenAI, and OpenAI sends me back some kind of insight. Then, as a developer, every time that message is being sent, I have to pay OpenAI. What happened initially is that all these apps launched with subscriptions because subscriptions are by now probably the most acceptable form of monetization for consumers, right? It's like it's an easy thing to understand. But if I have one of these AI wrapper apps and I charge somebody a subscription and suddenly they're making 100 photos of plans in a single day, because I am paying OpenAI, I might actually lose money on that user. Um, so we had customers uh, tell us about this challenge, and then as a result, what we built was our virtual currency feature, which is in an open beta right now, and the virtual currency or the credit beta um, allows you to very easily implement credits in your app. Um, Give your user credits for a subscription, right? I'm a subscriber and I get 100 credits every month. Uh, Sell extra credits as consumables, specifically for those AI apps, so that they could say, hey, you have a subscription, but you can only snap like 50 photos a week to prevent them from losing money, and then actually create a little bit of upside where your most engaged users can pay you more. We built that virtual currency or that credit feature, but that's also ideal for games. And traditionally, we've not really done a ton of stuff with games, but now suddenly we have a feature that makes a ton of sense for that audience, and not because we were like, "Hey, there's a market opportunity. Let's build something for these people that don't really use RevenueCat yet." No, we built it for our users first, right? So that's very specifically what we do. We very deliberately look at what our customers are struggling with, what they ask us for, and those are just the things we built. The financing thing is also like a good example. People have been asking us for a while. if there was a way we could prepay them their App Store payouts, because we know that, a month and a half from now, you're going to get a certain amount of money from Apple. We can give you that money now. And for apps that by and large tend to shoestring their growth, right? They need to make $1 and then they spend that dollar on growth. Having those dollars sooner just enables them to go faster.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, there's been so much of chaos with App Store policies lately. Apple finally allowing external payments, the alternative app stores popping up, your web billing product just launched right into this mess, and the timing seems almost too perfect. So, how are you thinking about this fragmented payment landscape? And with all that data you are seeing through Dipsy, and your real world experiments, are developers actually going to move away from in-app purchases, or is this more than a hype than as compared to a reality?
Yeah, so the fact that we could launch that fast wasn't an accident, right? It was kind of obvious that at some point something was going to happen, so we'd done a lot of the preparation beforehand, and then actually literally pulled an all-nighter as soon as the news launched to make sure that we have a feature that enables developers to at least try. And yeah, you asked a couple of questions there on the legislation changing, right? That is actually happening in a bunch of places, and it happened in a bunch of places before the Epic versus Apple thing. I'm Dutch. I live in the Netherlands. Very famously, if you are a dating app in the Netherlands on iOS, you do not need to use in-app purchases. That exemption has been in place for like 3 years, and um, the result is, and you see this kind of like accelerating now, is that you get this terrible fragmentation where in every market and on every platform there are slightly different rules on what you can and you can't do. And the best thing for developers to do in that situation is test it, right? Which is what you referred to earlier, what we did with Dipsy. Dipsy is an app we own very specifically to be able to experiment with. So as soon as the Epic versus Apple ruling dropped, and we had our web payment option ready, we launched an experiment on Dipsy. I think we sent 20,000 20,000 new users through an experiment where we tested a paywall with in-app purchases, a paywall with in-app purchases and a web purchase button, and a paywall with just web purchases. The latter is not allowed for most apps. It's allowed for Dipsy because Dipsy is a reader app, and reader apps are like famously exempt from using in-app purchases. But previously, if you weren't using in-app purchases, you just couldn't offer purchases on iOS, which is why Shopify, Netflix, etc., send you to the web to do a purchase rather than offer an in-app purchase. So we did this three-way experiment, and what became very, very clear, very, very fast was that at least for Dipsy, at least for this experiment, whatever money you were going to save on the platform fee, you lost immediately on just a declining conversion rate. And makes sense when you think about it, because on mobile, people have been conditioned for years now that when you see a paywall, you hit the button, the little Apple or the little Google dialog pops up, and you know exactly what is going to happen, right? And then if you hit a button and then suddenly you're being sent to a web page, or you're being asked to put in your credit card details, something else happens. But people get scared, or people are surprised, and they just like break off the payment. So what we saw was that hit was so big that all your platform fee savings were gone pretty much immediately. That's not to say that that's going to be true for every single app. That's not to say that we couldn't have experimented and tweaked and polished the process to eke out a couple of percent more to maybe break even. But then is that the best place to spend your time as an app developer? I would argue probably not. And then, the unfortunate truth of the thing is that because of the lack of flexibility on Apple and Google's side about all of this over the last couple of years, in different places, governments and regulatory bodies are just going to force them into these changes, and it just makes things more complex for developers. So my conclusion there is, in 90% of the cases, if not more, as a developer, don't bother. Just do in-app purchases. And if you're part of the 10%, then experiment, segment, target, optimize per user segment on what type of payment options you offer, and just like figure out what works best for you.
That is true. I mean, those real world insights must be invaluable. But I imagine that the strategies they vary quite a bit depending on your customers. Like you work with everyone from solo developers to companies like OpenAI. How do you think about success differently across those segments? Because I mean, are there growth strategies that actually work across the board, or is everything super contextualized to the type of developer and app?
I think that the biggest variable there is that the bigger your audience is, the more sense it makes to segment. That's the biggest thing, right? Where if you're OpenAI, or if you're OpenAI size and you have hundreds of millions of users, then creating like super precise segments of a couple of 100,000 people and then optimizing for that segment, um, probably makes sense and probably makes you more money. And if you're small, that just doesn't make any sense, right? Um, so what works across the board is experiment. Right? Always, always, always experiment. Experiment with your paywall design. Experiment with pricing and packaging. Experiment with your messaging. Experiment with your App Store landing page. Experiment, because whatever you came up with on day one is very, very unlikely to be the optimal solution, right? Just like statistically, that's just very unlikely. So experiment, and then as you get bigger, just start experimenting on slices of your audience rather than the whole audience. And then as you get even bigger, take smaller slices. That's the biggest thing, right?
You were talking about a little bit competition, what I understood. So you recently surpassed Stripe as the go-to payments SDK for almost half of payment accepting apps. But competitors like Adapty are specifically targeting RevenueCat customers with migration offers. How would you defend market share while expanding into all these new areas? And with your international push to the Asia Pacific and Latin America, are you seeing different monetization patterns or AI tool adoption rates in those markets?
we don't really worry a ton about competition. Stripe's not a direct competitor, right? So the thing that makes the round is this payment SDK breakdown list. And the thing is, a payment SDK for like an e-commerce business where you can use something like Stripe, it's not the same as RevenueCat as a payment SDK. When you look into those lists, the closest competitor is 15 times smaller than us. At those kind of numbers, it doesn't really make a ton of sense to worry about your competition. It makes way more sense to worry about your customer. Make sure you build cool and interesting stuff that helps them make more money, right? Quite famously, that's the company motto: help apps make more money. Um, a couple of years ago, we changed our pricing, where before we did the thing that everybody in SaaS does. We have good, better, best, right? And you package up a bunch of features and functionality, and the more somebody pays you, the more they get. We dropped all of that and have a single plan. And that single plan gives you access to everything. If you make less than $2,500 a month, that single plan is free. Every month where you make less than $2,500, you don't pay for it. The features and functionality you get for free are the exact same things that OpenAI uses to make billions and billions and billions of dollars, right? That's relevant because the moment that you don't package up your features and gate them behind specific pricing tiers, the entire company becomes incentivized to only build features and functionality that help your customers make more money. Because literally the only way we will ever make more money off of a customer is if they make more money. So that's what we do, right? We focus on building features and functionality to help our customers make more money because then we make more money. One of the big focuses for this year and the next, in addition to like always building things to help apps make more money, is internationalization. Right, we're in half of newly shipped subscription apps in the world. If you would filter it down to the US, that share is way bigger. We're less strong specifically in like Southeast Asia, so we've been focusing a lot of our effort and attention there. Make some strides in Japan and Korea. Turkey, it's not Southeast Asia, but is very interesting for us because, well, the Turkish industry is having a bit of a moment, and yeah, we kind of just follow where App Store revenues go, because if you would rank countries in the world by mobile consumer revenue, right? So take ads out of account for a minute. How you would rank them is US is number one in terms of dollars being made. Then it's China, then it's Japan, then it's Korea, and then all of the rest. But they make quite a lot less than the US, Japan, US, China, Japan, and Korea. So they're doing a lot of stuff in Japan and Korea. China is also in there, which is something we're looking into very, very hard. But China's like famously a little bit of a difficult market to do business in. So we're trying to figure it out.
That is a pretty valuable global perspective, I would say. One thing that stands out is how much community building RevenueCat is doing. These vibe coding cafes in NYC, Paris, Tokyo, plus Shipaton with over $350,000 in prizes. And for a platform company, how much does community actually drive growth? And with AI democratizing development, you're probably seeing more, non-technical founders jumping in. How does RevenueCat adapt its messaging and education for this new wave of AI native creators who understand business problems but might not grasp the technical nuances?
To tackle the first part of that question first, community and building relationships with the people that actually use the product um, is critical, and not so much because it's like a growth lever or a user acquisition trick, but the thing you asked before, where it's like, what's the next thing you build? We need to hear from the people that are actually using RevenueCat on a day-to-day basis. So we go to a lot of conferences. We organize a lot of things that allow us to just get FaceTime with our customer or potential customers, just so we can learn what their day-to-day looks like. So we can hear about their needs, their challenges, what have you. So that's why we do community. On the messaging for non-developers, we've done some stuff, right? So the one of the good side effects of the AI, the rise of AI, for somebody like us, where we're like the clear market leader, is that when a non-developer asks AI how to solve for in-app monetization, the AI is just going to tell it to use RevenueCat, right? So the messaging for us is like the AI does the messaging for us, which is good. But then you get these people into your product and they don't actually know anything. Um, And that's more of a product challenge than anything else. So one of the things we've been working on, for example, is our own internal fake app store that you can connect RevenueCat to as you're onboarding, so that at least you can get stuff set up before we send you to Apple or Google to create app store accounts, which you might not ever have done before, right? Just like move that friction a little bit further down the line, specifically for these less technical developers. And there's a limit to how much we can enable these people, right? So for you talked about the vibe coding cafes. We organized those very specifically to just get FaceTime with vibe coders, like non-technical app developers. So rather than us finding them, we just like organized a meetup and then just waited for them to come. It's really, really fun. I went to all three myself, and then you can stand behind somebody as they're like working on their app. And then you pretty quickly see that there's a segment of these vibe coders that are just never ever going to be able to ship something because they lack so much context, right? I've literally stood behind somebody that had vibe coded a pretty decent app. I think it was in Bolt actually. And as I asked him, right, like, have you created an app store account? Are you going to submit it to the app stores? Like, this person wasn't even aware that that was a thing. I didn't realize that he would have to send things to Google and Apple to get it into the app store, right? And if you lack that much context, how much education can we do as the monetization solution that slots into all of that? So yeah, we're trying to enable the people that at least have some understanding of mobile, right? That go into the AI assisted coding or the vibe coding exercise with at least a chance of success, right? And then make it as easy as possible for them. But yeah, there's a line, right? We can't teach mobile from A to Z to somebody that literally has none of the context.
That is such an interesting and important shift. Um, I have a bigger picture question, which I keep thinking about. With AI making app creation so accessible, are we heading toward app market saturation, like millions of more apps, but maybe lower average revenue per app?
No. Um, just no. No, I think I might have been worried about this like 3 to 6 months ago. But the thing that's happening, and we spoke about it earlier, is that uh, by and large, actual developers are just putting out more product. And what they tend to do with that extra bandwidth is build more niche products. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because when you're building something, there is you're thinking of return on investment, right? And we're going to spend 3 to 6 months building a thing. Will I make enough money to warrant that investment? But now the thing takes me 3 weeks. The investment I need to make back is a lot smaller. So people are building for smaller niches that probably don't have the same revenue opportunity, but also previously that just didn't have a product built. To illustrate it, think of, and I saw this not too long ago, um, a yoga app for pregnant women, right? Very, very niche and very, very, very specific, right? If that would have taken you 2 years to build, would you have built that? Is the market big enough? But if it takes you a month or two, now you're building that. So more products, but those products fit smaller niches, and those niches are going to be monetized where before they weren't monetized. So actually what's happening is maybe average revenue per app goes down, but there's going to be a lot more apps actually making money. And if you look at just app store performance, you can see this happen, right? Way more apps being launched, but there's also like quite a lot of revenue growth happening across the entire app store.
That is true. So how does it exactly change the economics for a platform like RevenueCat? And what is happening to the app quality? Are we seeing a flood of low quality apps, or are people using the time savings to build better products?
Well, take that in a reverse order. I don't think you see more low quality apps, probably because it's actually easier to build quality now than it was a year ago, right? If I'm a developer and I'm not good at UI, Claude or Cursor or Bolt or Replit, they do the UI for me, and the UI is going to be good, right? It might not win any awards, but it's not going to suck. So I think it's easier to like deliver on some kind of like um, base level of quality. And what that means for us is that the long tail gets longer. Um, if you spend as much time in the app stores as we do, then you'll know that for the last couple of years, the upper echelons of the app store in terms of revenue have actually been pretty stagnant. If you look at the top 100 apps in terms of revenue, out of the 100 apps there, a grand total of 5 were shipped in the 2020s, right? So top 100 apps, only 5 were shipped this decade. There's not a lot of movement there, right? And that's not going to change anytime soon. But there's a way longer long tail appearing where there's way more apps making some money. And yeah, that just means that um, the the makeup of our user base changes a little. But as we spoke about before, we don't really develop different features for giant apps versus small apps, right? Because ideally, a share of these small apps become, if not giant, then at least big apps at some point.
That is true. Um, I mean, it's amazing. Now, you guys have this incredible data advantage, and you can see monetization patterns across tens of thousands of apps, different verticals, and different markets. Are there any surprising insights you would have discovered recently that challenge conventional wisdom about app monetization? And looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunities in the app economy? What advice would you give to someone thinking about building an app business today?
Biggest surprises? Well, I don't know if it's surprising. And when we noticed it for the first time, it was a little surprising to see how well, on average, AI apps monetize, right? So this includes all the AI wrappers. Um, it just looks like for consumers, I don't know if it's the novelty or if there's actual value being perceived there, but uh, quite famously, health and fitness apps are the best monetizing apps in the App Store, right? So by and large, they convert better, they make more revenue per user. Kings of the App Store until the AI apps arrived. They do better. Um, so that was surprising. That was surprising at first. Where the opportunities lie, well, we spoke about it before, but niche down, right? Build something very, very specific. Um, Ideally, build something specific that you have some unique perspective on or knowledge of. And my favorite example here is we do the Shippies every year. There are awards for subscription app excellence. And last year, the Shippy for the best new indie app was won by Shotzi. And Shotzi is an app to keep track of the medication you take for diabetes. The lady that built that app literally shipped it 2 months before the awards came out, and I think she already had like 1,000 subscribers in 2 months. And how she'd gotten those 1,000 subscribers is uh, she's diabetic she's part of a Reddit group of people that struggle with the same thing. In that Reddit group, she would see people talk about needing to keep track of when you take what medication and how you feel the rest of the day and what you're eating, right? And people were doing that in like an Excel sheet or in a little physical book. And that's the app she built, right? She built an app for a thing that she very deeply understood because she was going through it herself, um, but also for a community that she was very much a part of. So that worked pretty much immediately. And that's now a business. She's now a speaker at our upcoming App Growth Annual Conference, where she talks about how she went from being an indie to actually having a business where I think it's like a team of 5 or 6 people. Um, she got a little lucky where the medication you take for diabetes is the same type of medication people take for weight loss, right? So uh, the whole Ozempic thing was very, very good for her. Um, but all of that to say that she built something very specific, relatively niche, but for a niche that A, she was a part of, and B, she understood really, really deeply. And I think that that's that's a good thing to try. Build something that you have some kind of unique perspective on.
So, I mean, I definitely want to understand that, the biggest opportunity for RevenueCat at the moment.
The biggest opportunity for RevenueCat at the moment is to be the Shopify for digital goods and services because that doesn't exist, right? And as it becomes easier to build digital products, um, it sets people up for success when they can just focus on deeply understanding the problem and who they're building for. Right? That's the thing you should be thinking about as an app developer. Uh, what am I building? What is it for? Who is it for? And everything that distracts from that, you should not do or outsource, right? And then our opportunity is to take as much of that off of your plate as humanly possible. And yeah, that starts with monetization, but like uh, as you spoke about, we're looking into some other stuff just to make sure that you can focus on uh, what makes your beer taste better.
Hmm.
Do you know that quote?
Yeah.
It's like a Jeff Bezos Jeff Bezos quote, but it's like it's apt, right? It makes a ton of sense because I remember, because I've been doing this for a while, like 10, 15 years ago, when we did mobile games, we had to spin up our own servers. We would physically move racks of servers from one data center to the other data center. Huge distraction. Huge distraction. Didn't matter to our customers. Didn't make us make more money. And AWS kind of took all of that noise away, right? And there's a lot of noise for us to take away.
That's true. All right, Rick, that was an incredible deep dive into the future of development and monetization. You have given us so many insights about everything from AI powered development to global market dynamics. But now let's switch gears completely and to get some quick, unfiltered thoughts from you. I have 6 rapid fire questions, and I just need to get your gut reactions and answers to.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot pause. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. For a new AI built app with a $10,000 budget, focus on App Store optimization, paid acquisition, or product led growth.
I would invest in the product. At $10,000, it's not gonna give you a ton of insights on the paid side. Maybe influencers, actually, right? Influencers, and then with that kind of budget, it's relatively small. Find find a couple of creators, either like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Find creators that are very, very close to your target audience, and then uh, make sure that you pay them to create some kind of content about your app, post it to their audience, but sign over the rights to the content to you. That's a relatively standard deal, right? But you need to make sure that the last part happens, because then, $10,000, maybe you get like, if you get lucky, you could get like 100 people to post something for you. Um, you can take whatever one of those creatives works best, right, organically, and then with the money you make off of that group of users that you're going to acquire, invest it in amplifying the reach of the best organic performer. So you just take that and then you run ads with that as the creative. That's a relatively good trick. I'd probably do that with $10,000.
Got it. The biggest mistake developers make when implementing subscriptions in AI generated apps.
Well, probably not taking into account their API costs. It's people have been quote unquote successful and lost a ton of money off of AI apps, right? Because they don't realize that they have to pay OpenAI or Claude or Google. Oh, and like implementing a free tier in your AI wrapper app, and then the app explodes and you have a ton of API costs that you're making $0, that, right? That's bankrupted a couple of people. So yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, that was a tricky one. Here's a trickier one though: web payments or in app purchases for maximizing revenue in 2025.
In-app purchases. That's not even. Whoever says something different doesn't actually understand mobile app economics. It's no in-app purchases all the way.
I would agree. The most overrated growth hack that app developers still obsess over.
Oh, creating your own organic TikTok thing. I don't know if you've seen that, but there's people like warming up TikTok accounts, and then they have these like mini device farms at home where they have like 6 phones and they're running TikToks on all of these at the same time, and it's so expensive and time consuming. And the thing is, every once in a while it works for somebody, sure, and then they tweet about it, right? um, but that's survivor bias, right? For everybody that succeeds at this, there are 1,000 if not 10,000 people failing. There's so many things that are going to be like more productive ways to spend your time. So yeah, organic TikTok, it's just like, I wouldn't.
Okay, now this one is for all the data nerds listening. If you could track only one metric for subscription app success, which one would it be?
CAC payback. Zero question. CAC payback, for people that don't know, is uh, the moment you make back your cost of acquisition, CAC. So for that, you need to know your realized LTV for a user or a cohort of users, and you compare that to what you spend to acquire the users. Um, Shorter is better. If you're just starting out, if you're an indie, you want this to be ideally less than a month. If you really want to go fast, have it be less than a week. um, because every single time you spend $1 and you make that dollar back fast, you can invest it in growth, and you're just going to grow way, 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 way faster. uh, the reverse of that, the mistake a lot of people make, and I know you didn't ask, I'm gonna say it anyway, is uh, the CAC over LTV, right? So you take how much you pay for a user and then how much the user pays over their entire lifetime. Uh, that's such a good way to lose your shirt, right? Because the whole point of a subscription app is that you're going to have recurring revenue. If you do some kind of predictor on what the LTV is going to be, the numbers tend to balloon up to crazy numbers, and you're going to imagine that you spend $2 on acquiring a user that's theoretically going to make you $200. But it'll make you that over 10 years, and by the time the 10 years are over, you'll find out that $100 was closer to like 6. um, don't don't worry about CAC over LTV until you want to like raise funding or whatever, and you need to impress an investor. Up until that point, CAC payback.
Got it. Complete this sentence. The future of app monetization is.
RevenueCat.
That's wonderful. Well, Rik, that was such an insightful conversation I had with you. And I feel like we covered so much ground today. Like from the technical details of AI integration to the big picture vision of where the app economy is heading. Your perspective on everything from vibe coding to market saturation to the future of monetization is exactly what our listeners need to hear. And what really struck me is how RevenueCat isn't just riding these waves of change, but actually helping to shape them. The way you are thinking about supporting both traditional developers and this new generation of AI native creators, um, that is going to be so crucial as this space evolves. And honestly, some of those insights from your real world experiments with Dipsy and the patterns that you are seeing across tens of thousands of apps, that's the kind of data driven perspective that you just cannot get anywhere else. So, thank you so much for being here. What an incredible conversation with Rik Haandrikman from RevenueCat. We covered everything from AI powered app development to the evolution of mobile monetization strategies. The convergence of AI tools and sophisticated monetization platforms like RevenueCat is creating unprecedented opportunities for developers. Whether you are using vibe coding to build your first app or scaling an existing business, the tools and strategies we discussed today can help you succeed in this rapidly evolving landscape. If you are working on an app or thinking about building one, I would love to hear about your experiences with the AI development tools and monetization strategies. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review. It helps other developers and growth professionals to find these conversations. And definitely check out RevenueCat if you are looking to implement subscriptions or explore their new AI integrations. Next week, we will have another deep conversation about the intersection of technology and business growth. Until then, keep building, keep experimenting, and keep finding new ways to create value for your users. Thanks for listening.